This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
Ben Settle, super practical.
I'm not telling people to have a mistress. I'm teaching you, learn the lesson from the people who have a mistress, because there's many business lessons that apply.
Pious.
There's a part in the book of Revelation where Jesus says, I want you either hot or cold. I'm spewing lukewarm churches out. And I think it's a good way to look at your list.
Romantic to his very core.
Once in a while, I'll give my girl a present, like a Snickers bar or something.
And totes tender.
If someone asks you to walk on eggshells, smash the eggshells and let the chips fall wherever they may.
Adored by feminists everywhere.
It takes a strong woman to admit when she's wrong.
Not a judgmental bone in his entire body.
I look at all the free information people give just on Facebook and I go, what a bunch of time hose.
Has a PhD in armchair philosophy.
In the land of dumbasses, the smartass is king.
You'll never meet a more sensitive guy.
If you really care about people, you shame the hell out of them. This is Ben Settle, the bensettle.com podcast. And so I was telling Jonathan just now that by the time this episode comes out, I'm sure this book will already be in publication. But I've decided to take the transcripts of the first volume of Email Players Rules, which is like the first 140 Email Players Rules, and put them into a book. And that'll be volume 1. Because we're not going to, Jonathan, we're not going to stop doing this. Let's figure, I will brain fart all the stuff out I need to do more of these. I don't care at this point. I will keep doing them. But
crowd favorite.
Somewhere along the line, one of the fan favorite episodes, and as much as I'd like to blame Jonathan for this, just to do it, it's always my fault. That's one of the rules. It's always your fault. And in this case, it really was my fault. We were missing Email Players Rules 99 through 105. And the reason why is because I have all these rules written on a sheet. And then when we do them, I bold them out on that sheet so I know they're done. I must have jumped the gun, Jonathan, got a little too excited. Maybe I had a dream about doing them or something, and I bolded them out. And thus, I was driving myself crazy when I was going through all these transcripts saying, where are these lost Email Players Rules? So we had, not only did we have the lost Ben Settle Show ones from those 12 episodes, but these are the lost Email Players Rules that would have been within those 12. It would have been 13 lost Ben Settle Show episodes. So I know there's people listening.
No, Ben, let's be honest here. These people have been listening to us for a long time for the both shows, and we can be honest. This was the 5 episodes or the 5 rules that got lost when they burnt down El Bembo's apprentice's house, and we lost everything. Pitchforks.
Yes, we could go with that. We can run with that. I don't mind, embellishing the bit.
So it's their fault. They burnt it down. That's right. Now we're shifting.
Yeah, we'll just go with that. That's fine too. But it's still my fault. You know why it's my fault, Jonathan?
Why?
Because Email Players Rule, whatever, says it's always your fault.
Fair enough.
So even if it's not my fault and something's burned down beyond my ability to stop it, it's still my fault. But that doesn't mean I still won't share the blame with others. I mean, it's still my fault, but you did it. That could be another email. That would be like an anti-rule. But these are the lost Email Players Rules. So we're going to fit these in so that we are actually on track. So that said, first of all, what are the Email Players Rules for anyone who doesn't know? So they are inspired by Beige Phillips Show by comedian Dante Nero, who does this thing called the Beige Phillips Shows for guys who want to get their balls back and that sort of thing. I believe it is a paid podcast now, Jonathan. I think I told you that last time. And that's fine. They deserve it. But he did this thing called the Beige Phillip Rules, which is like rules and maxims that he lives by and goes by and does his stuff by. And I thought, I'm going to adapt that. I'm going to swipe that, because this is the kind of swiping that I actually am for, is going to another industry completely and taking an idea, not the words themselves, but an idea, and adapting it to your own. And so that's what I did. And so we've done 100, well, technically we've done 133, but after today we'll have done 140, I believe now, Jonathan. We should be up to 140 now after this. So I don't know. I don't even know what day it is right now. To be honest with you, I know it's Christmas time, right?
Something
Jonathan,
like that.
let's do it. This is a Christmas episode, or is it not?
Oh man, you're putting me on the spot. I have no clue, but we can go with that. Sure, it's Christmas or nearby.
It's Christmas.
It's Christmas somewhere.
So as my Christmas gift to the listeners, I'm going to give them the lost Email Players Rules. So starting with number 99, and this will be 99 through 105. Number 99, if you want, and by the way, this is guaranteed. This is guaranteed, Jonathan, to make certain women listening to this gasp,
Uh-oh.
right? Like in horror, in absolute horror. And this is my Christmas present to them especially. Because this has many applications. So if you want to know how to please a man, ask the mistress, not the wife. Now,
Nice.
I would love, Jonathan, I would absolutely love to take credit for this. I wish I had invented this. I really do. I did not invent this. I was having a discussion with an email player subscriber, Stephanie Arroyo. And this was her line. So if you want to bitch at someone, go to her and look her up and go ahead and complain. This was her line. She says, if you want to know how to please a man, ask them. Now, she's not a mistress, friend. She's never been a mistress. Don't get me wrong. But it was her line. And it does, if you think about it, like you think of Don Draper, right? Like from the show. Yeah, his wife was kind of like cunty to him, mean. So he's spending his time with the mistress all the time, or the Sopranos. Who did Tony Soprano spend all of his time with? Not Carmela, who's always getting on him and stuff. He goes to no. Am I saying you should have a mistress? No, I'm not. I'm not doing that. All right, I'm not endorsing that for anyone listening to this who's going to freak out. Oh, Ben. First of all, I couldn't even do it, Jonathan. I literally could not do it. One girl is hard enough. Dealing with one girl's emotions and hormones and all, I don't know how these guys do. I really don't. But there are many lessons you can get from this wisdom of if you want to know how to please a man, ask the mistress, not the wife. Now, here's an example from the business world. And I've known many, many, many examples of this. So this is just one. There are people who I know for a fact hire certain copywriters to do certain jobs, small jobs. They're friends of the copywriter, so they want to hire them. They want to support their business. So they hire them. Now, these are loyal friends, but they don't really do that great of work. So they give them like these small little fluffy jobs, like the easy jobs, not anything that like matters. While they go and hire some like hardcore copywriter to do the real stuff. That way they keep their loyalty to their friend, but really they're going to the mistress for getting things done. They're actually going to the mistress. They don't even usually know about the other copywriter. And it's astonishing how often this happens. And it doesn't just happen in copywriting. I guarantee you, Jonathan, people listen to this, there are people on all of our lists who only stick around to be loyal to us, but really they're buying whatever we sell from someone. Jonathan, I would bet there are people who love you and they're on your list, but they're actually they're doing their own podcasting or they're finding someone else to do it because for whatever reason, they just don't consider you the mistress, you're the wife. Conversely, I know for a fact there are people on my list, for a fact, because I know these people, who buy everyone else's email stuff, but never buy mine. But they stay on my list out of loyalty. And thus, they're going to the mistress, not the wife. Can't even blame them. Look, if you can find someone who can do a better job, you should. And if you want to retain that loyalty and you don't want to lose your loyal following, sometimes you got to go find yourself a mistress. I will leave it at that, Jonathan, because I know
reckon a few marriages for Christmas. Go get them.
I don't want to be the one who's suddenly this upcoming Valentine's Day, and we have a lot of single women suddenly mad at me, and I don't want that. I don't want that. All right, moving on. Pushing on to the next one. Email players rule number 100. Haters gonna buy. Now, I've talked about this many times, Jonathan. The people who have absolutely hated me, despised me, went and became some of my best buyers. For example, and I've talked about this before, and he told me this to my face, so I don't think he would get mad or anything for me saying this. Besides the fact that I've already said it on the air probably 2 or 3 other times at least. The great and esteemed Russell Brunson, who I am a huge fan of and have been a fan of ever since I heard of the guy back in, I believe it was 2006 is when I first heard about him. And, he told me flat out, he went to an Oceans 4. This is about 3 years, almost 4 years ago. He was in an Oceans 4, one of our Oceans 4 masterminds, and he was one of our guests there and everything. He paid to go there. He was one of the attendees, and we were talking at dinner. And he goes, Ben, I used to hate you. I couldn't stand you. Now, first of all, I'm thinking, well, that's kind of par for the course. It's no big deal. But he goes, but then I had to buy from you. He said, then I started just liking everything you put out, and he ended up becoming an email player subscriber. I don't know if he is anymore, but he was for a long time. He was, but he said something like his accountant unsubscribed him, and I don't think he ever bothered with it again. That's fine. The point is this. He was a hater who became one of my best buyers. And one of my best, he spreads the word about me all the time, just like I tell everyone about him. Gave me a nice testimonial at the Glazer Kennedy conference one time, because I remember he tweeted about it and I captured that. Now I use it on the sidebar of my site as a testimonial. Had he, there's something to be said by someone who's an intellectually honest and who doesn't like you can be turned to your side of the force if you apply enough pressure And if you do enough for the right things long enough. So don't necessarily diss on your haters is my point. Sometimes the haters can be your best buyers. Jonathan, I just sent, now this is going, we're way ahead right now. I know this, but recently I did this campaign, this affiliate campaign with Michael Senoff. And we sell the Eugene Schwartz, these audios that he did. And we do it every Labor Day. And I had a 14 email sequence, and this guy emailed me back saying how my emails suck and all this. Now he responded to the last email of the sequence out of 14. He's like, these are the worst emails ever, basically is what he said. He goes, the only value I get out of them is they show me how to not write emails, right? It's like, no, he didn't like it. And he goes, I hate to be the hater here. Okay, that's fine. So you're a hater. I don't mind it. I didn't get mad or anything. I simply, of course, I turned it into content, talking about how we made 935 sales over those 14 emails, and we run them every year for the last 6 years, and we make about 100 to 150 more sales each year, more than the year before, even though my list is a lot of the same people already have it, all this other stuff. But this guy, who I will not name, I would not be surprised if one day he comes back to the fold and says, you know what, I ended up buying something from me. I can't say he will for sure, because he was an extra special kind of hater. But we'll see. We shall see. All right. Email players rule number 101. The more effective you are, the more respected you are. Now, this is a quote directly from the late, great master of negotiation, the world's most feared negotiator during his day, Jim Camp. And, I think there's a lot of truth to that. If you want to be respected, just become effective at what you do. There's a lot of people out there swearing like sailors and trying to have an attitude and be edgy and all this stuff they're trying to do because they see everyone else doing it, and nobody respects them. They get a few high fives from kind of the marketing pros and all that, but mostly nobody respects them because they're not actually effective at anything. There are people out there who put themselves out there as coaches and all this in certain things like copywriting and email, whatever, who they're begging for attention and respect, and you can tell on their attitude. But the reality is nobody respects them because they're not effective yet. When they become effective, they'll be respected, regardless if anyone likes them or not. Being liked doesn't matter. It's being respected that is more important. Email, so that's that one. Email players rule number 102. Jonathan, now this I had to do this to you a few times. You're a very flaky man.
Oh, thank you.
I'm teasing, of course. Ignore flakes so hard they doubt their own existence. So, Jonathan, how many flaky people have you dealt with in your business career? Just guess.
Hundreds.
And how do you handle them? Do you try to contact them? Do you try to get on their good side? Do you beg them for their attention, or do you just ignore them?
I call that before settle. BS, right? Before settle. That's when I used to try to contact them. Now I know better.
Well, I've wasted many years doing the same thing. And, flakes are going to flake. You cannot change a flake. A flake is a flake is a flake. And you cannot change them. They can maybe change themselves someday, but it's not our job to change them, nor can we. And so it's better just to ignore them and let them pursue you. And when they pay you something, that's fine. They want to pay you money, great. But to sit there and chase them down, and not just in business too, but like in your personal life and stuff. Not all that long ago, I had an ex-girlfriend contact me out of the blue who I had cut out of my life for being a flake many years earlier. And tries to cut me, send me a text, I don't even have her name in my phone. It's just like a phone number that shows up, and I just recognize the area code, and tries to tell me about this winery that closed down that we used to go to, as if
So what?
As if it was a very lame attempt to do it, but expecting me to probably get back to them and so they can do their flake thing, and I honestly just had to block it because that kind of flakery does not fly in my book, and it should not fly in your book. Dear listener, if somebody flakes on you for any reason whatsoever, you got to be ruthless about cutting them out of your life. I mean, cutting them out completely. I don't care if it's a business thing, personal thing, family thing. Somebody flakes, you cut them out, and you can bring them back one day if they've proven and demonstrated they're no longer like that. But until then, a flake is just going to be like a dandruff. It's just going to fall out of your hair and onto your clothes and make you look bad and annoy you and frustrate you.
Nice.
There we go. Email players rule number 103. Jonathan, testing two turds against each other simply gives you a shinier turd.
Really? I thought you couldn't polish a turd.
Well, that's the thing, and old school copywriters understand this. It's these new ones, the people who the people who think that direct marketing was invented by Facebook, like those guys who think like before Twitter, there was no direct marketing, the millennials, basically, they don't realize that this has been going on for over 100 years. And it's nothing new. The internet's nothing new. Facebook is nothing new. These are just medias. They'll come and go. Use them while they're around, and some will stick around and some won't. Direct mail's been around forever. It's not going anywhere. Broadcast fax was taken away from people just like that. 900 numbers, even infomercials have come and gone. I mean, it's just, you cannot control the medias. Then something better than the internet will come along eventually. It probably happen in the next decade or two, be my guess. Something will completely replace the internet as the big, people still use the internet. You used to be able to sell on it, but it won't be the big thing. And, they're always trying to come up with new things, like Snapchat's the new thing. Everybody gets excited by whenever something new comes out there. But the reality is this. Nothing has changed as far as this goes. You cannot polish a turd just because, and you see this with copywriting. People will test these screams versus whispers. So they'll test whispers versus screams. So they have an ad and it does a shitty, crappy job. So they'll change the headline, thinking that's going to solve it. It's still a turd offer. Nobody wants the offer, but they think changing the headline is going to do it. Or conversely, they change something insignificant in the ad and they, whatever. If it's a turd, it's a turd. If nobody wants the product, nobody wants the offer, you can polish that thing all day long. You might get a 1 or 2% boost, but you're not going to get the big things at all from testing two turds against each other. You might as well just get rid of the turd and actually have a real offer. That's my point. Very simple, Jonathan, which is why most people listening to this will ignore it. We'll go forth and ignore it and still sell whatever. And that's still my pessimistic thought of the day. So, email players rule number 104, always be closing. Now, this is a old school sales thing. I mean, this is nothing new about this, but I was reminded of it a couple years ago when I had lunch with Ryan Stewman, the hardcore closer. Great marketer, great salesman, great sales trainer. Really good, by the way, at making himself like a celebrity out there. He's really out there doing that kind of stuff, which I find very fascinating. In fact, he told the story about once where he lives in Texas, and I guess he was, speeding at 100 miles per hour or something. And the cops who pulled him over recognized him. So he got out of the speeding ticket.
Wow.
If that's not a reason to actually get out there and make yourself prominent, I don't know what it is. But here's the point. He was telling us the story about some guy asked him a question, a question that the guy should be paying for, like a consulting question. And Ryan said, just 1 second, what's your PayPal email address? And he said, well, it's this. So Ryan sends him a PayPal invoice. You can't just pick his out. I don't know what he charges, probably $1,000 an hour or something. Thinking the guy's going to get free advice or something. He sends him a PayPal thing. He goes, always be closing. And he just said it so nonchalantly, like he does this every day. And I always thought that was a very interesting thing. So we've talked about always be closing. Actually, we did a whole episode of, I don't know if it was this, I think it was the old podcast, Jonathan, about always be closing and the ways you can do it. And it's very important. You should always be closing. Now, just because you always be closing doesn't mean you should always be trying to close someone. And that's a whole different thing. You don't want to come out, if you're one of these people who's trying to manipulate people into doing things, that's not going to work. But always be closing is you're always asking for the sale. You're always asking for the sale. And you're doing it maybe passively or aggressively. It doesn't matter, but you're always going in that direction. So we have a whole episode on that somewhere in the archives, Jonathan. I don't know what number it is. There's 135 of the old show. Somebody will have to use the search function and they can find it. And then finally, to round off this episode, email players rule number 105. Better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener in a war. So I don't know who said this, Jonathan. It's some proverb somewhere. I don't know. Maybe Sun Tzu. I have no idea who said it. Probably some martial artist. Because a lot of people who study the hardcore martial arts actually aren't violent people. They don't go around trying to pick fights and stuff. In fact, they may never get in a real fight in the real life because they're actually trying to avoid that. They actually do just want to be gardeners and be left alone. But they're prepared for when something's going to happen. And so here's an example of this. There's a lot of writers out there. Jonathan, I know you know a lot of these people too. Writers especially who just are averse to selling. The idea of selling horrifies them. And yet, but they're always complaining they can't get anyone to buy their stuff because they're scared to sell, or at least sell in an aggressive manner. Well, they need to learn to be warriors in the sense they need to learn some direct response marketing. They need to start writing an email every day. They need to be creating a list and writing an email to it every day to sell what they have. Now, I know this sounds very complicated, Jonathan. I don't mean to confuse you or anybody else, but that's the way it is. If you don't be you don't have to be a starving artist. Be the artist that's fat, fat and happy. That's the way I see it. So that rounds out these lost 7 email players rules, 99 through 105. Next week, Jonathan, I'm going to talk about something. This next episode is in some ways, it is the most valuable one I probably will have ever done. I'm guessing. For people who understand what I'm about to talk about. For people who get it, it'll be one of those, if they're not doing it and they're not thinking this way, this will be a huge, they use the word paradigm shift and all that, and game changer and all these these trendy, lame words. We'll call it all that. For a lot of people who have not thought about it, and those who aren't taking advantage of it, need to rehear it anyway. And there's not very many people who take the mindset we're going to talk about next week, but I do think it's the most profitable thing I can impart on everyone. I did not invent it. I learned it from someone else who said it, and it didn't dawn on me until about 11 years ago when I first heard it. And I've been working toward it ever since, sometimes slowly, sometimes quickly. And this, I think, will be one that people won't want to miss. You can miss all the other ones, but don't miss this one. And that's all I got.
There you go. That is another bensettle.com podcast in the can. We'll be back in your ears next week.
You've been listening to the bensettle.com podcast. To download yourself a free issue of Ben's prestigious $97 per month email players newsletter, which is going to show you 24 ways to write emails people eagerly read, click, and buy from, head on over to www.bensettle.com. Off you go. You know it makes sense.
This is the podcastfactory.com.